So good afternoon. I'm just about to give the pool a bit of a clean. I've got some bags of salt and some acid, and you can see the pool's a bit grotty down the bottom there. Zane's got a pool party, he's got a few friends coming over tomorrow afternoon, so I was going to give the pool a bit of a clean, but I thought what I'll do beforehand is I've got a couple of my favourite soft plastics here, and I thought I'll throw them around in the pool and just give you guys an idea of what I look for in a soft plastic and why these are my favourites. I've done a fair bit of trial and error to narrow this down to what I think is the best. When I say the best, I feel the best for me, the way I fish. How you fish is a totally different way. When I'm talking about fishing soft plastics, I generally talk about fishing at anchor in the burley trail, because that's what works for me. So what I generally look for is the lightest and the slowest drop that I can find. I want it to stay in the strike zone. I'm pretty sure I've talked about it in plenty of my videos before, but I like it to stay in the strike zone on the drop for as long as possible. So I go for the lightest jig head I can possibly get away with to get the slowest fall. So this one here is pretty much, I think, the lightest jig head you can get in a 7/0 hook is a 1/8 TT head. On here is a 7-inch paddle prawn. The 7-inch paddle prawn is one of my new favourites, just because I've refined it down a little bit, and what I really like about it is this really delicate tail here. The tail takes hardly anything at all to get it moving. On the fall, it twitches because it takes nothing to get it moving, and when you're twitching it back to the boat, it really goes off. It basically, just the action of the boat is enough to get this tail twitching, and I really like that in my plastic. So this one here, I will show you the fall rate of this. I don't know how I'm going to go with this actually. I'll try to show you how slow I'll get this one. This one will sink. So that's on the sink there. You can see how slow the sink rate is, and you can see when I twitch that up. Well, I hope you can see. So that's the slowest sink rate I got. Now bear in mind, this is a saltwater pool, but it's not going to be anywhere near as much buoyancy as what the ocean's got. So, and just so you're all aware, the reason I did this before I put all the acid and stuff in the pool is because this guy's still covered in Procure scent from this morning. I don't know how that's going to affect my pool water, but it's not going to peel off in a hurry. It stays on for ages, this stuff, so I figured it'll be all right. So that's the 7-inch Halco paddle prawn. What I'll do is I'll try to twitch this back past the other GoPro over there and see if I can get a bit of in-water action from it as well. So there's your 7-inch paddle prawn. Just twitching past the camera now. You can see, I hope you can see anyway, I don't know how this camera's going to work. You can see how any little tiniest twitch gets that little tail, really gets that tail working. And there, and I'll show you my sink rate. There's my sink rate, total slack line. That's my sink rate there. And the tail just sort of twitches its way slowly to the bottom. So I've got the slowest sink rate I can get. One little quick hop, and it really gets that thing hopping, and it really gets that little tail twitching away on there. So this will be one of my new go-tos. They've been around for a while, the paddle prawns. I just hadn't really used them because I didn't have any, to be fair. But when I started looking into plastics with delicate action, this one stood out because of that really small, the really flexible tail, and the fact that it works with not very much. You don't have to really impart much action from the rod or anything else. Just that delicate tail works on its own with just the movement of the boat. So that's one of my favourites right there, the paddle prawn from Halco. I'm pretty sure these are also scented. Pretty sure the paddle prawn is also scented and made of the amino acids or whatever it is they make the plastics out of these days. So it's biodegradable and smells like fish, tastes like fish, and it's also quite soft and gelatinous to touch, so if a fish grabs it, they're not going to be put off by it. So that was probably one of my favourites right there. So I'll move on to where it all started for me. So where it all started for me is the Abrolhos bullwhip. The Abrolhos bullwhip in the 7-inch. Again, white. I just like this colour. It's sort of just like the bait fish, same as the bait fish colour. It just, I don't know, it just works for me. I don't think colour makes a huge amount of difference, to be honest. I think it's more about the profile of the, the lure than the colour. Now the Abrolhos bullwhip, again, it's got quite a delicate tail, twitches around without very much action at all from the rod. On the light jig head, I get the super slow sink rate again. I'll throw this in front of the other camera there and see what kind of sink rate we get on this one. So you can see there, it's reasonably slow, the sink rate. The tail on the bullwhip really doesn't do too much when you're twitching it around. You sort of have to impart a bit of action on this one. It's more just like a bait fish sort of profile. But to be fair, the bullwhip is, I've caught plenty of big snapper on the bullwhip, so they do like the bullwhip. I don't know what kind of vibrations or whatever it sets off. It's got all these ribs and stuff on it, so I'm not sure what kind of vibrations that sets off under the water. But yeah, the tail is not really a super action sort of tail. I think this is more about the profile of the lure than anything. It looks like a bait fish. It's sort of that bait fish profile, and it moves through the water like an injured bait fish, which is what makes the bullwhip work. So this is where it started for me, really. I was using, well, actually where it started was using gulps. I started off my first into plastics in using gulps on a 3/8 head, and I used to just cast them out, let them sit on the bottom and fish them like baits. And the gulps really worked. The snapper used to like them. And then slowly but surely I started moving into different kind of plastics when I got confidence that plastics actually worked. And I went to these Abrolhos, and what I really liked about them was just the robustness of them. You just can't break them, you can stretch them, you can bend them. The fish don't kill them. You buy a packet, and they, providing you don't get snipped off or bitten off, they'll last you forever because they just don't disintegrate. They're really strong plastics. The only problem with the bullwhip is I don't think it's made out of the biodegradable protein or whatever they make the other ones out of. I think these are just rubber and plastic, so they don't have the smell or the scent. But the upside to them is they have these ribs which holds onto the scent really well. So I use Procure scent. If you smash a bit of Procure in there, it stays in those ribs for ages. And yep, bullwhip minnows, they work really well. So this would have to be my ultimate favourite. This would be my go-to plastic, I'd say. If I was going to go to any plastic, it'll be this one right here. The Berkeley Powerbait, Nemesis. These ones are pink, but I also use them in white, but pink works really well. I caught my biggest ever kingfish on one of these. And these ones, same reason again. I'll just rig this one up. Just make sure, especially with these ones, you've got to rig them up nice and straight. If you don't rig them nice and straight, they just don't seem to swim as well. And this one's got a really weird sort of fin along the back. I don't know if you can see that. It's almost impossible to get it smack bang in the middle of the fin, but you've got to get them reasonably straight. This one, for exactly the same reason as the paddle prawn, is just this long, delicate tail. It just takes nothing to get it working. Just on the fall, and that's twitching, and that's what you need. The snapper generally hit, I'll put it in front of the camera there, you can see that, just on the fall. That one, these actually probably have more action. These have probably got more action than the paddle prawn. That tail just really works with hardly any sort of, just on the fall, and that tail is just smashing away like an injured bait fish. So you hardly even have to move this, and that tail is just really seductively wiggling away. I'll just twitch this away in front of the camera over here. Sorry, I'm trying to work two cameras at once here. As you can see there, the actual fall rate on that, the actual sink rate on this one's actually quite a bit faster than the other ones. But you can see how well that tail works. It's really quite a seductive wiggle. And when you drop them to the bottom, I don't know how this is going to work, if you'll be able to see this in the camera. When you drop them to the bottom, it'll sit nose down on the bottom. No, I don't think you're going to be able to see it on that camera. When you drop them to the bottom, when you let them hit the bottom, they sit nose down like that, and that tail just wafts around in the breeze or the current above anyway. So even sitting on the bottom stationary, that tail just wafting around looks like, I don't know, a sandworm or a fish digging in the sand, or I don't know what it looks like. Who knows what fish think. But the Berkeley power bait, if you're just new to plastics and want to get into them, I'd highly recommend doing these ones in either white or pink. Again, these are made of whatever they call this stuff, 18 times longer fish hold on, and they're made of amino acids and God knows what they make them out of. Probably none of it's good for the environment, but they're supposedly biodegradable, and they will degrade into the ocean if you leave them in there forever, or if you lose them. Again, I don't know how strong those claims are, but you just have to believe what you're told by these companies, I guess. So if you're new to plastics, getting into them, get onto these. These are really good. These are probably, I'd say this is probably my #1 go-to plastic. If I want to catch snapper on a plastic, I would go with one of these ones every time, because I know these ones work. And as you just saw, how seductively that tail wiggles with hardly any sort of movement from the rod, full stop. Alright, take that off. Actually, I'm going to wash these. I'll wash these off before I put them back in the bag, in case the salt and the chlorine from the pool destroys them and they rip the rest of the bag apart. Alright, now a lot of people are into their bottom fishing for dewies and so forth. So these are your paddles. These are your paddle tail these are from Free Chef's Tackle, but they're almost identical to what you would get from Abrolhos. Same thing, they're very long, they're very stretchy, robust material. They got the ribs there for the scent. The paddle tails, I'm not a big fan of them for what I do, fishing on light jig heads, mainly for the reason is the light jig head just doesn't get them working. These ones need a heavier jig head to bash them around. It needs a heavier jig head to really get it moving. They've got a really strong action. It's got a really big tail. It takes quite a bit of weight or quite a bit of movement to get that tail thudding. The only upside to it is these tails literally thud. When these tails move through the water, it's literally a bop, 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 and it really, yeah, that was like a helicopter noise anyway. But when this tail moves through the water, it really thumps, and you can literally feel it through the rod, thump, 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 thump. So I suppose it attracts fish from a long way away. I've heard rumours that it might scare off. It might scare off fish that are a little bit sensitive or a little bit spooky. I don't know who really does know. But I'll throw this one in and you'll see what I'm talking about. On the drop, it's just not going to do anything. It'll just sink. It's got that slow sink that I'm looking for. So it's got a really slow sink rate because it's quite a flat plastic. It's quite flat, quite fat and quite buoyant on its own. So with that 1/8 head, it's got a really slow sink rate. But as you can see on the fall, that tail doesn't even look like twitching. And on the way up with this light jig head, it just spins around because the jig head's just not heavy enough for the plastic. So to make that work, you would have to move on to a heavier sort of jig head. I think I've got some jig heads here. I'd be talking about, like a 5/8, or maybe, probably minimum of a 5/8 head. I don't want to tie another knot and rig this one up, but yeah, I'd say a minimum of a 5/8 head to get that working properly. And then I'm going to lose my slow sink rate that I look for. If I was drifting along and hitting the reef, then I'd probably go with one of these, because these are with you use the heavier jig head, it's going to get to the bottom and it's going to thud around on the bottom. And I know the dewies really do like that extra I don't know what you want to call it, the thrum, the extra action and the vibration through the water. Vibration, that's what I'm looking for. The dewies really like the extra vibration through the water that comes from these big paddle tails, and a lot of good dewies get caught on the paddle tails. But for what I'm doing at anchor, they're probably not much chop. If you wanted to work them up and down through the water column, you could use a heavier jig head and work them back and forth through the water column, no worries. Yeah, but I'm kind of lazy, which is why I like the light jig heads. You can cast them out, stick them in a holder for a couple of minutes, let it sink to the bottom, twitch it back up, and then cast it back out, let it sink to the bottom. With a 5/8 head or anything heavier than that, you're going to cast it in, it's going to be on the bottom within 10 seconds, and you're twitching it back up again. So if you really wanted to work the bottom of the water column, the bigger paddle tails are going to be fine for you. If you want to do what I'm doing, which is working the sort of the top end of the water column, then you probably want to stay with the lighter heads like this. So anyway, that's just a short rundown on well, that's only 3 different types of plastics. My top 2, definitely the paddle prawn and the power bait, for reasons which I've spoken about. Just a delicate tail. If I had to pick one out of the 2, I'd definitely go with that one there, the power bait. But the paddle prawn is also pretty cool as well. So there you go, that's 2 of my favourite soft plastics. The Berkeley power bait Nemesis, check them out, and the 7-inch paddle prawn. Head into Southside Boating and Fishing, they always carry these on stock, and they've always got the 1/8 TT jig heads. They're quite hard to get hold of, these 1/8s. A lot of tackle shops don't stock them, but Southside have always got them on stock because they know I'm coming in and they know I'm always going to be stocking up, so they make sure they've got them. So there you go guys, if you're getting into plastics, give these a go. They catch fish for me, and I'm sure they'll catch fish for you too. It's just a matter of perseverance and believing that they work. Once you believe they work, you'll use them more often and they will work more often for you. So that's it for this episode. Hopefully tomorrow I might be getting out again in the morning and I'll give them a crack. Stay tuned.